Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Your questions answered for 15k Q&A. Now I've got about 17 questions here, a good range. I couldn't answer everyone, so apologies there. Don't want to do too many, don't want to do too few. So I'm going for about 16, 17. Now I've obviously read these questions to say, yeah, I think that's a nice question to answer. But also I didn't want to script it. I wanted it to be quite natural. So I might waffle on about some of them, quite short with some of them. Just going to see how it goes. I'll probably have to cut a few times for a drink, something like that. But I'm just going to let the camera run really and see what I think kind of off the bat. Right, starting off with Adam Russell. He says, think one thing that needs to be remembered is that people were calling for Farrell's head before Ireland clicked against England and since we've been flying. If any nation could do it, I can see England easily clicking this year. So I think what he's getting at here is maybe we should give Eddie Jones a bit of time. He definitely has got some new methods of play going in attack and defence. Will they click? Now, it's a good point. England absolutely could click. The problem he has is he's not really selecting to help them click. That was kind of my point. You know, he's not giving Marcus Smith the tools around him to necessarily get the system to click. I mean, he's probably got a better backline at Harlequins, to be honest, than England at the moment. And I think that's fair. I think that really is. But they absolutely could click. If these systems work in the summer tours, we might be saying, yeah, it needed time. I don't know how good these systems are because it was looking well off in the Six Nations. If Eddie Jones gives a bit more balance, especially to that backline, maybe they will click a lot better. I was a bit worried about the holes in defence. Defence should be one of the easiest things to get right, and that wasn't looking right in organisation at all. I thought the attitude and the tackling was good, but not the organisation. So if any nation could do it, England, yeah, maybe. They've got the resources, they've got the players. I'm not sure I've got the faith in their coaches at the moment. Hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll see. Now, the next two questions kind of ask the same thing. Mr. Susan, Joshua Duff. Mr. Susan says, given how short England are of players in the centre, which is true, especially at inside centre, do you think there's still a place for Owen Farrell when he's available? And if so, would he act as a playmaker between him and Smith? Well, the second one's easy. Yes, he absolutely would act as a playmaker. Is it the last we've seen of Owen Farrell in an England shirt, says Joshua Duff. Does he still have something to offer? Well, yeah, I think he absolutely does have something to offer. And he is helping England out in many ways. Now, I've talked about Owen Farrell in a standalone video, so please go and have a look at that one. I think it's called, Is Owen Farrell Good Enough to Play for England? That sort of thing. What he does offer is excellent goal kicking. He still is our best international goal kicker, I'm absolutely sure of that. Although you could argue that if he comes into the team, kicks at goal, he's taking away that practice time from Marcus Smith, which is a bit of an issue, but at least you get two good goal kickers there. I think Smith will get better, but at the moment I think Farrell's probably a little bit more accurate, a bit more range as well, plus the experience, so he definitely gives you something there. If he plays with Marcus Smith 10-12, which I think they will, he also gives that extra kicking option, and Marcus Smith in the Six Nations has shown his kicking out of hand does need to improve a bit. It's not bad at all, but some of the kicks are a bit too high, a bit too long. Owen Farrell's a little bit more of a cool head, been there, done that, so he may take over a little bit of that tactical kicking, so that will certainly give them something. And compared to the Six Nations where Slade was playing 12, Farrell will give slightly more physicality. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's not a great tackler, as in he chooses not to be a great tackler. And this is the problem I have with Farrell. And when he came back from injury for Saracens just now, straight away he's in there with a dodgy illegal tackle, basically. And you could say it's bad technique, but he knows how to tackle. He could tackle more legally if he wanted. He could wrap his arms more, he could tackle lower. Will he choose to? Well, he hasn't in the past, so I'm a bit worried that, sure, he's strong, he's physical, he's aggressive, but he will give away some penalties. He will throw the shoulder in. He will stand up a bit in the tackle and maybe risk the high tackle. It's a bit of a worry. I'm not sure why he doesn't tackle more classic style. It's very rugby league. Maybe it's that kind of rugby league influence. I don't know. But yes, he's more physical than Slade, but I don't think he's the answer defensively at 12. But he is more physical than Slade. So that's kind of a half and half there. What he can't help really, he's not overly quick, so he's not going to add a running attack threat that they had. He will try and take it up pretty hard. He is a hard nut for sure. He's a tough man, got a real good competitive spirit, and he is a leader, and the guys do like following him, so he will bring a lot to England, but also there's still going to be plenty of deficiencies. Now, do we have loads of 12 screaming out to be selected? Probably not, but if we don't play someone instead of Owen Farrell at 12, then we'll never know. That's the thing. There's some young 12s I'd like to play there. We've talked about those at depth. But anyway, does Owen Farrell have something to offer? Yes and no. So hopefully that's answered that one. Now, a really different question here from Luke Hutchinson. Should rugby introduce goal line technology, almost like QI in snooker, that allows TMO to see easily if the ball has crossed the line, would be quicker making decisions? Now, I know what you're getting at here, Luke. I'm not sure it's going to work for rugby because a lot of the time it's not if it's crossed the line, it's if it's grounded, and that's normally because there's so many bodies in the way, and I'm not quite sure how the technology would tell if the ball is grounded. Maybe it's possible, let me know. You'd have to have some sort of sensor in the ball. A lot of these TMO technologies is all camera-based, the Hawkeye, tracking from multiple cameras where the ball is. But you have to be able to see the ball to do that, like with goal line technology in football. With rugby, I think you'd need some sort of chip in the ball that can tell when it's grounded. And that could be tricky. Possible maybe, but I'm not sure the technology's there. Let me know if you know differently. Next question from Dan Wasdale. Really interesting question. In the past couple of years, there was a lot of talk of Maro Itoje taking over England captaincy in the absence of Farrell. With Laws, sometimes Curry taking on the captaincy role, do you think Itoje is still destined for the captaincy? Now, obviously, this is speculation. My guess would be he will be England captain a few times at some point. Is he going to be the long-term captain? Well, that depends how the incoming coach after the World Cup thinks. Eddie Jones is clearly going to be staying until the World Cup, so maybe they think Itoje is the man. I'm not so sure at the moment. The thinking now is just let him get on with it. If he were the captain, I think he'd do a decent job. He's there in the forwards. You won't really want a forward as your captain. Is he a bit more of too much of a pantomime villain? Would he attract more attention than it's worth? Like someone like Curry, who's a bit more understated, a bit quieter if you like, a bit less of that celebrity around him. Maybe he'd go under the radar a bit more. I don't know. So 50-50 on that one. Maybe he'll be the captain if the new coach really wants him as captain. What is for sure is he's a definite starter, and that really helps. He's experienced, he's clever, he could definitely do the job. But at the moment, I think they might go for someone like Laws and Curry, who's a bit more understated, who won't get all that attention. Right, Val Haynes. Do you really think Edwards is going to leave the French and try and make a team out of the current shambles? I'm guessing you mean England. Never. So you've kind of answered your own question there. He's not going to leave in the short term, that's for sure. He's really onto a good thing with France. He's got some fantastically talented players. Let's say they go to the World Cup and win it, or whatever they do, he's still going to have the same group of players there. It's going to be incredibly tempting for him to stay with France unless the RFU bend over backwards to make him feel wanted, to say, we'll pay your wages, whatever the role is. And so far, the RFU have not extended that sort of feeling towards Edward. So I don't know about never, but certainly it's getting a bit late. He's in his prime now, and his prime years are slipping away, if you like. Wouldn't it be great if he was in there as defensive coach or even a head coach of England? Maybe that would be the one that would tempt him back to say, right, you've done a great job as defensive coaches. Now have a go at being a head coach. He was head coach at Wasps. So maybe that would tempt him back. But at the moment, I agree with you. I don't see it happening. A question now from Sean Mahon, if that's how you say it. Some Scotland fans think Gregor Townsend has taken us as far as he can. Do you agree? Who would replace him after the World Cup if he goes? My choice would be one from Dan McFarland and Jamie Joseph. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jamie Joseph. I think that could work. Now, let's say Scotland don't do great in the World Cup, which is possible. They're in a tough group. He could well go after the World Cup. Now, do I think he's taken them as far as he can? Maybe, and maybe it's just the fact that he's been around for a while, that same face. He's had some issues with some of the players. If it was to carry on after the World Cup, would you have the same buzz as if you would have a new coach? So I think maybe it was just a change would be good rather than him not good enough Scotland do have limited resources. It is the best Scottish team I've ever seen in the professional era. So in some respects, he's done the best ever in some ways. I don't know. But yeah, probably after the World Cup, I imagine unless they do something absolutely stellar, I think you do move on. And that's not to say he's a bad coach. Nice little short question from the mighty Bob. Is Johnny Gray, when fully fit, Lions worthy, and would you start him? Johnny Gray's a great player. Love Johnny Gray. Honest as the day is long. A coach would absolutely love Johnny Gray because he grafts, he makes his tackles, he's technically good, doesn't do silly things, keeps his head down. Would he play well for the Lions if selected? Yeah, absolutely. You'd have him there grafting all day long. Would you start him? Probably not if everyone was fit. I think just for pure physical talent, there's a few others there who are a bit better. But is he worthy of the Lions? Absolutely. If he was selected, he'd do a great job. Now, a really interesting question from Christian Cox. All sorts of things in here. I'll try and break it up. It was noticed that South Africa targeted Ford as a weak link. Do you think the side trade-off of Randall and Smith is worth their attacking potential? So anyone's going to target Ford because he's tiny. He's a tiny player. I think he's actually a decent tackler, but when you're so small, you're always going to concede ground even if you make the tackles. So I think, that's not necessarily surprising. Randall's tiny as well, but he's a good tackler. Smith's a bit bigger than Ford, and he's becoming a better tackler, so I don't see Smith being particularly a weak link as a 10 compared to other 10s in the world. Randall, is the trade-off worth it? Yes, I'd say yes it is, as long as you balance it out and you give Smith someone physically robust alongside him, i.e. not Henry Slade. He gets Esterhazen at Harlequins. And then how would I react to Barbary being 13? Well, this is kind of coming back to the argument that maybe Sam Simmons should play in the centres as well. If they had chosen to play in the centres and they played regularly for their clubs, I think both could be great. And maybe England do have a problem with too many players picking back row when they really should be a centre. Maybe there's a problem there in the kind of age groups, if you like. But I'd say no. I say it's too late, especially considering he was a hooker. Now he's kind of saying I'm a back row. For him to then play 13, I'm not so sure. Unless they use it as kind of like a 10-minute change up at the end of a game or something like that, where he goes into the centres for a bit, or you just use him off a line out in that sort of position. I think that's probably a better way to go. Right, Bonita, bit of coverage of the Women's Six Nations, etc. Now, yes, you can see I've actually been doing Women's Six Nations. I did it last year, doing it this year. I'm basically following England's journey through to the World Cup because I think they really are red-hot favourites to win. If they get it right, I think they should win, actually. So the answer there is yes. A Kieran question for the 15k Q&A. Same one, Women's Six Nations. So yeah, answer is absolutely yes. Really looking forward to the World Cup. That'll be absolutely great, especially when you get, the three best sides together, which is France, England and New Zealand. Certainly New Zealand should be looking a lot better than when we saw them last time. Finley Scott. Who will be the next breakout rugby nation? This is interesting. Japan, yes, they were absolutely a breakout rugby nation. 2 World Cups in a row, absolutely stellar. Now competing very heavily in Tier 1. I think my answer would be Fiji. Now, Fiji have been good for a long time. We know they've got great players, but as a 15 side, they haven't really make it stick. Now they've got a Super Rugby outfit in there, in Fijian Drua. That's going to help an awful lot. So maybe not in the short term, but when they start attracting their best players to that Super Rugby side, a few more guys who would go abroad, go and play for Fijian Drua, they can get a core of a Fijian 15s team playing based in Fiji, with a group of coaches that are really going to help them with things like fitness and the line out the scrum, all the kicking, all the areas that they haven't been the best at in the past. Then you add in the superstars from around the world. They could really make it happen more consistently. So my answer there would be Fiji. Let me know what yours would be, because there's a few options. Next question about water carriers, whether they should be allowed to roam the touchline, shouting instructions, etc., during stoppages. Now, that's a tricky one. I don't think you should stop people on the sidelines, like physios and whatnot, shouting encouragement and passing messages on occasionally. It's when it's kind of clearly a coach posing as a different role. That doesn't seem quite right. So yeah, I think they need to tighten up the rules a bit. Certainly, I'm not really blaming coaches for doing this. If there's a loophole in the rules, that's kind of what coaching's all about, to find the loopholes, exploit them, help yourself win. But I think they should jump on that one and really just clamp down on it, to be honest. Then last couple, T-Man4 says, who are your top 3 favourites to win the Rugby World Cup next year? I think you mean most likely. And I think it's pretty clear, to be honest. I think it's the whole of South Africa, I think it's New Zealand, and then I think it's the home team, France. I had to think about it. Other sides like Ireland maybe will be close, but I just can't see past those 3. Certainly at least one of them being in the final, if not 2. Last one from 7665. Does Eddie have any time left to blood new players? If so, how does he go about it? Who do you think deserves a chance? Now, it's not too late, but certainly coaches will want the bulk of their World Cup squad already in the system. However experienced they are, they'll want to have seen them for a fair bit. Someone like Ireland, Faroe Island, knows the huge bulk of his World Cup squad. But you always allow for talent to come through, form, a bolter or 2. The problem with England is I think they need a few more than just a bolter. Who deserves a chance? Well, I've been going on about Kelly for a long time and Hassel-Collins, so I say those 2 I'd like to see a chance, and Barbary, of course, so those 3. But I think Eddie leaving it a bit late, because I think he did have a plan that went wrong with his older guys like the Vunipolas. Then he's tried something again which hasn't quite clicked, and it's just getting a bit late. So there is time for England to blood some new players, but they need to go about it very quickly in the summer. Eddie tends to like to go fully stacked into these summer tours, when I think maybe he should actually leave a few guys behind, because I think they do need to play a bit of catch up. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for all your questions. There were quite a few more, but I didn't want to go on for too long. Let me know what your answers to those questions would be, and any other questions you may have, and I'll catch you next time.